Hello everybody, it's Edouard here. I'm product manager at Australia, and I've been happy to work on V Collection 9 for the past 18 months and more. So today I'm here to talk about two instruments that I've been working on. The first one is CS-80 V4, which is the total rebuild of the CS-80 V or previous version, and also to talk about the KORG MS-20 V, which is a new addition, fresh instrument into the V Collection 9. So I'm really happy to be with you today, and I hope you will learn some stuff. I think the way I will approach it today is give you a quick tour on the instrument and not go into each and every detail of the instruments, but more about specific features, some tips and tricks, and some stuff that I like about the instrument to share with you guys. I'll try to share stuff that you don't really read on the internet or don't really know yet. So let's get into it. So in the first place, we'll start with CS-80 V. So CS-80 V, well, we worked on this instrument for the first time in 2004, if I'm correct. So it was one of the first software instruments we've been developing, actually. And nowadays, we really wanted to come up with a new version that really met the current CPU requirements and that would translate all the expertise and the craftsmanship we've been building up for the past 20 years. So we came up with a new version, so CS-80 V4, that has been totally revamped from the interface to the audio engine, to the architecture, to the feature set. So if you want to talk about CS-80, the original CS-80 from Yamaha, well, I think it has been developed in 1977. So it was, I think, the first polyphonic analog synth equipped with presets. So it was quite a huge achievement. And trust me, if you can see a real CS-80, well, you understand that it packs a lot of electronics. So modeling this synth has been a real challenge because it's just a beast, a tank that weighs more than 80 kilograms or something. So it's even heavier than me, actually. And, so we went through the whole process of modeling this piece of history into each and every detail we could, from the oscillators to the filters to all the quirks and, discrepancies you can find in each unit that makes it unique. So yeah, let's get into it maybe. So if we want to talk about CS-80 overall, well, it's a pretty, vanguard synth, I would say, because back in the days, it was already like a bitimbral, meaning that you have two synthesis lines like this. So for example, if I listen only to one, I will have one sound, And if I listen to the other channel, I will have another sound. And that's what makes it pretty interesting. And in our previous version, we didn't have much presets playing with this bitimbrality. And I really wanted, in this version, to see a few presets that would play with this, unique character for analog synth, I mean. So yeah, so basically, everything revolves around these two channels. You have two synthesis lines with different oscillators. So I can maybe reset a little bit the patch. So we're hearing only one channel here. So you have the different oscillators. For example, you can select your waveforms like this. And you can mix them the way you want. And then you have a filter section with its dedicated envelope, a VCA section to manage all the volume of this channel, and some controls that are tied to really expressivity and keyboard responsiveness. So basically, what CS-80 does is mixing these two lines into a single synth. and it's really the basis of what you can do on it. And the second part, I would say, just under this section, well, it's more like general controls that affect all the channels at the same time. And for example, you have macro controls for the two lines, like to control all the filters. Or even boost the resonance. And a mix between the two channels. And from that starting point, that makes it something pretty basic, but that's a really good start because you can then blend the way you want the two channels, and you can even change the octaves. And yeah. So what I wanted to talk about in the first place is maybe the expressivity of this synthesizer. It's been really, really praised by a lot of musicians, including someone who passed away recently, sadly, called Vangelis. You probably know him for doing the OST of Blade Runners and a lot of other movies, basically. And what's really, really great about CS-80 is that it's really centered about the way you play it. So unfortunately, I'm not really a good keyboardist, but I can show you some little tips and tricks that makes it really interesting. So here we have a basic sound. And the second tone that you heard is basically when I engage aftertouch. So when I play normally, you have a sort of brass. And if I engage aftertouch, I get a second tone coming up, like this. And what's even better is that if I use polyphonic aftertouch to do that, I will have this kind of super expressive tonality that will be controlled for each note. For example, if I play on the Microfreak, which is equipped with a polyphonic aftertouch, I will play a chord. You can see that each and every note is alive. And if I play on top, like this, and that's one of the big strengths of CS-80. And basically what happens is that the first channel is playing on its own, like this, and the second channel is muted here. So if I unmute it, I will hear it alone. And basically what happens is that the aftertouch is raising the volume of this level control. So when I'm playing normally, we can't hear it. And when I'm putting aftertouch on, I can trigger this sound by itself, and it's just coming on top of everything. So it's really, really expressive. And everything revolves around this logic in CS-80. For example, the sub-oscillator has controls over different parameters. And if you engage them, you hear, like alone, you hear them right away on the filters. But you can also activate them using the aftertouch, like this, for example. So it really feels like a violin or something, where the expressivity is translated into some kind of motions, which makes it really, really unique and, you know, alive in some ways, depending on the way you are playing it. Then I think an interesting part of CS-80 is the ring modulation. That sounds really, really unique. And what ring modulation is that it modulates the amplitude of the signal. and creates some really interesting overtones like dissonant, bell-like, or just sometimes motion depending on the speed you're playing it. So for example, this preset from Jean-Michel, one of our sound designers, is kind of mimicking a carillon, like this. And if I'm removing the ring modulation, it's a very sweet and pure tone. And if I'm engaging the ring modulation, I get this really metallic, weird sonorities. And this is the speed of the ring modulation that creates this kind of overtones that are really unique to CS-80. So. And what's really, really funny is that if you are using high speeds, you are really changing the tone of the sound. But if you're like lowering the speed to something like more human, let's say, you just have a very nice motion and sweet motion added up that is added up to the song. So to dig a bit deeper into the ring modulation, I will show you another preset. This one is called Cloud Generator, and it's the sound I was playing in the beginning. And another interesting feature in the ring modulator is that it's equipped with its own envelope that can modulate the speed of the modulation while you are playing. So when I will play my first notes, you will hear the speed decreasing in time and adding a very nice motion, but that is evolving over time like this. It gives this like super atmospheric, super elegant, ethereal sounds, starting from something really metallic to something really lush and creamy. So it's really unique to this synth, and this is really something you should dig on top of the other modulations you have at hand just next to the ring modulator. And yeah, so basically when doing these instruments, I really wanted to preserve the original character of the instrument and not, fall into something generic. I really wanted this instrument to stand into the collection with its own sound. So a tough choice have been to delete some of the features we had before, because these were like creating a sort of inconsistency with the original nature of the instrument. So, for example, it was the filter mutes, or the changing the slopes of the filters, or having oscillator sync, and removing this kind of features helped just like focusing on the core sound, And this is more like the sound that you should know if you know Vangelis and stuff, like. So yeah, I really wanted to be able to do the classic sounds, but also I wanted to prove that this instrument stands in the modern and contemporary instruments. So we'll discover this with the next sounds, basically. So considering that this was really an expressive synth that you could really play with and express like if it was a violin or a guitar, I wanted to by adding stuff, I really wanted to restrain the possibilities to something that preserved the original character of the synth and also enhance this expressivity. So the first thing I tried to add is called pan. And playing with this bitimbrality, it allows you to spread the two channels on the stereo field. So here you can hear two sounds. and I will just touch the pan like this. And it allows like to change the sound from the left to the right. So this is the manual control. But if I'm using, for example, the sub-oscillator to modulate this, like this, you can hear that it really creates like a brand new like a dimension of expressivity. So I can, for example, map it to my aftertouch, like this. So it really offers something that you didn't have in the previous instrument. Because basically this instrument had pitch modulation, filter modulation, and VCA modulation that was possible with the sub-oscillator and the touch response, meaning the aftertouch. And this opens just a new dimension of expressivity, and it just makes a little bit more polyvalent and modern. So it's really, really nice. Also, what I tried to do is to add even more expressivity into the instrument. And what I tried to do is preserve still the logic of the instrument and the way it works. So I added a module that is not present in the hardware, but I kind of used the same paradigm with these levers assignable freely to just make you able to express yourself in the way you want, and especially if you're a standard keyboardist, you don't always like have a ribbon like the original synth. So you can use aftertouch, you can use the mod wheel in the way you want. For example, I can modulate the panning with the mod wheel along with the speed, and let's say the filter with the aftertouch. So if I play a note like this is with the aftertouch, and this is with the mod wheel. I can just combine this and make it even more polyvalent and expressive in the following the way I play. Yeah, so maybe I can reset the sound now from. So here we have a basic sound. And what I also did is I added some controls, replacing some of the preset buttons in the center. And I will set up a sound right now. Let's say a square with a bit of pulse width modulation, maybe just a tiny bit. Set up the filter, a bit of envelope. Like this. And what I can do now is duplicate this channel on the other channel, like this. And now I can hear both at the same time that are blended. So it's practically the same sound. And what I added as well is voice dispersion, meaning it's really something that mimics the original analog synth behavior. And it introduces irregularities in the parameters, such as the filters, the pitch, the pulse width, the envelope times. And it makes it just like more natural and more organic as like a human behavior, let's say. So if I copy the two sounds and I apply voice dispersion, I will hear something that blends even better because it's a bit different. If I listen without it, like it's more straight, more digital. And with this, and now if I like adjust a bit the filters like this, like this, and now I will enable a new feature we added, which is called unison, which makes all the voices playing all together. And now, if I open the filters a little bit, I have something like super powerful because it's like all like 8 voices and 2 channels playing at the same time. So it's 16 voices playing all together. And now what I want to do maybe is pushing a little bit the advanced features forward, and I will pan the 2 channels using the panning feature. And now I have something super wide and super powerful. If you play like super low notes, if I push the resonance maybe, you hear how natural and organic it feels. It's like if all the voices were alive and doing their own life on their side. Yep. So yeah, that's one of the things that I really like about the new features we added. So now maybe we can have a quick look about the advanced features. I mean, it's nothing really fancy, but I just wanted to give more flexibility to the users to design like crazy stuff that goes beyond what the scene can originally do. And if we look at this preset called Japan Dreams, it shows pretty nicely what you can do with the advanced features. So here is the sound. And what it does is that it uses the functions to modulate the arpeggiator rate and a bit of the channel mix to make like something crazy that lives by itself. So if I disable the modulations, it's like a normal arp, you know? And it's already super beautiful, right? And what Jean-Michel, the sound designer, did is that he modulated the arp rate using the function generator like this. So it's full of surprises. And basically you have 3 functions like this and a modulation mixer that can give you more flexibility over what you want to do with the advanced modulations. And yeah, basically, I also wanted to show you something else. So of course, we added some extra features to enhance the keyboard expressivity here, where you can map velocity, aftertouch, mod wheel, and keyboard tracking anywhere you want in the synth. But we also added effects. So a lot of people like and love the raw sound of the instruments. But to make something modern, like for example, if you're making cinematic music, effects are really key to get the sound that you want. And in this, for example, this preset, I just wanted to show you something funny that the sound designer did. So let's listen to it. So yeah, it was just like a funny preset that I really like. So here we have a pitch shift delay that has been added to the synthesizer sound, and it like repeats the phrases that you play and pitch them, and so it's really, really nice, and it really gives an edge that you can't really have with the original synth. So I really enjoy this kind of sound, and I suggest that you like dig with these effects, because you can do really crazy stuff with it. And this is also how you can make this very good sounding instrument more contemporary, you know. So yeah, one last thing maybe I wanted to show you before jumping to the KORG MS-20 V is taking a preset that is really like more modern that you would expect for CS-80 and maybe like fancy, and try to understand how it's been made, you know. So the preset I picked is called J-Hour, and well, let's listen to how it sounds first. So yeah, a lot of stuff happening, right? So maybe we can try to understand together how it's been made by the sound designer. So you can hear that there are a lot of different textures in this patch. So maybe in the first place we can mute the effects and look what's there without the effects. So I just muted all the effects, and let's listen to it again. So there is still a lot happening at the same time. So let's listen to the first channel first. So here we hear different stuff. So we are hearing something tonal, like an oscillator, but we're also hearing noise. And in this channel, we can see that there is a tiny bit of noise that is being swept with the filters, which creates this kind of like a... And that's a part of the first texture made in the first channels. And if we look at the second channel, so here we have something tonal as well, very sweet. So this is the sine wave basically. So if I remove the sine wave, now we hear some kind of weird, noisy, digital sound. And basically what it is, well, it's pulse width modulation, very filtered pulse width modulation. So if I lower down the HPF, you can hear what it is. This is how we did this kind of really digital sound. It's really, really smart. So now if I blend again these two oscillators, channels, I mean, and if I put back the sine wave, you already have quite a lot, even without the effects. And then what's happening with the effects is that the first delay is like providing some stereo width. See? All the stereo is provided by the delay. And then the pitch shift delay is adding up some low end, and the reverb adding a last touch of lush, like hairy effect. So yeah, I really wanted to show you this preset because even though it's a vintage synth, it sounds really modern, like very cinematic, and you could definitely use that to create soundtracks for films. And I don't know, it makes me think about a guy doing ambient called Deru, and I really like this kind of sound, so I just wanted to share that with you guys. So I think I've talked about what I wanted to talk about CS-80. So if you have questions, at the end I will just answer some questions. So just note them and send them in the chat, and we'll try to answer them later on in the stream. So now I just wanted to jump on these new instruments, and it's not an update, this one. It's the KORG MS-20 V. So yeah, you heard KORG. Yeah, we partnered with KORG and we came up with a software instrument that models this legendary, well-known mono synthesizer. So you might wonder why KORG and Arturia, they already have an emulation. Well, you know, it's really great that we can partner together, and we believe that, you know, two brands associating together like is beneficial overall, and I think everybody is really happy about this instrument. So I just can't wait to dive into the features and the tips and tricks I've prepared for you. Just about history, MS-20, the original synth, is one of the most sold electronic instruments ever. I mean, if you read on the KORG website, it's more like 300,000 units sold, including the software, the synths, etc. So it's really a piece of history again here. But what you can do with it is not just history, it's also very modern and very rough and very, you know, like beefy. So it has a lot of character, and this is really something we'll dig into in the next minutes. So yeah, so basically, if we want to go for a quick tour of the instrument, I won't explain everything, you know, I will explain what really matters. Everything revolves about a pretty simple principle. So basically it's two oscillators, a mixer, and two filters. And this is the real strength of the instrument. This is where all the character is contained, but you also have some other bonuses. So basically what we did is we modeled the vintage versions from 1978, so the MK1 MS-20, but also the MK2 MS-20. So it was released like in 81 or something, just later on. And the differences between those two instruments, the difference resides in the filters. So what you are hearing here this is the MK1. And if you switch to the MK2, you will have a different flavor. So a lot in common, but a different taste, right? So the MK1, it's really more gritty, more, it doesn't whistle that much. It's more like some kind of FM weird sonorities, and it really distorts more. So you have more texture, and also you have less bass. So if you really look for super strong low end, maybe it's preferable to use the MK2. And the MK1 is like really about all the texture, all these non-linearities. It sounds really, really like more primal, I would say. So in this preset, like the two filters are really, really key in the sound of the preset. And it's really unique. So I'll just change this preset, and maybe we can explore a little bit more of the sound. So if you saw this this announcement we made just right before the collection, well, we did a kind of super heavy, like scary drone, and this is with the MS-20 that we did it. So I'll just try to reproduce the sound so that you can see the difference of character between the two filters. So this patch uses the MK1. So I will just like try to reproduce this this drone because it's funny. So a very important thing to understand with MS-20 is that the nonlinearities are mainly focused in the high-pass filter. So if you start to drive the high-pass filter, you will have tones that you don't really expect from the filters. And this is really where you nail the nonlinearities and this like gritty, like noisy, unpredictable behaviors, you know. So I will just start to do that, like overdrive the high pass and see how it reacts with the low pass. And you get like this really weird tones, you know, like even if it's like if like overdrive pedal was contained in the instrument already. So this is really where all the magic is happening in the MS-20. But then you have the whole patch bay that is like supporting you if you really want to go deep in sound designing your own sound and really doing some SFX and all this kind of stuff. Because on its own, without the patch bay, it's really good at doing leads and bass and this kind of stuff. So here on our side, it's also polyphonic, so you can also do keys and pads and strings. So like the patch bay is really like unlocking some new possibilities, and it's also unlocking a module that is called the external signal processor, so the ESP. And basically, the ESP is really interesting for several reasons, and I think we should have a quick look at it before jumping to the rest. So I will just patch it. So remember, the sound is like this now. So I will patch the signal out of the audio chain into the input of the external signal processor. So the external processor has several features. It has a bandpass filter, frequency to voltage converter, so it can read the pitch of a signal and translate it into a voltage to, for example, to drive the oscillators of the synth with the guitar. And it can also like be used as an envelope follower. So it's really a tool, but also it's something that does something to the sound. So we'll hear together what it does. So I'm gonna patch the output to the master input. And you immediately hear the difference, right? So it's overdriving a lot, and it's like super nice. You can really use it as an effect processor on its own, and maybe it should be called effect signal processor instead of external signal processor. So I will just push the drive a bit up and see how it reacts. I'll compensate the volume at the same time. So yeah, basically this is what it does on its own. Like you don't really need an overdrive on this. Like you already have two super overdriving filters, and you have a super like external signal processor that is here to like push the boundaries even further. So it's really, really pleasant to be able to work on this in the box, you know. So of course, we'll talk about the rest right now. I'm just going to open a new preset. So we added some features to the original synth, of course, like we used to do. So maybe you will tell me, previously in the stream, you said you didn't want to alter the nature of the instrument too much. Okay, but on this one, I added a few tweaks that I think are really welcome because you will understand. So this first preset is using oscillator sync, and this is something we added. So oscillator sync like syncs the phase of one oscillator to another, and basically when the other oscillator is revolving its cycle, it resets the cycle of the other one. So it creates overtones and really, really interesting, you know, flavors. And basically, if you know like Prodigy, this kind of guys, you will recognize the sounds it can make, you know. So this is the sound of the sync. Basically, when you alter the pitch of the slaves oscillator, you really like create this kind of overtones. I will show you right now. It's really, really nice to have this. It's really a tiny sound palette on top of what it can do already to make it even, like to make it polyvalent. It really goes into the territory of the MS-20, I feel. So I really think it's a good addition into this synthesizer. So yeah, and another interesting feature we added is called unison. And if you don't know what is unison, it's basically telling the synth to play all its voices at the same time when pressing a key. So I have this sound, for example, that I disabled the unison right now, and it sounds like this. And if I enable the unison, it will sound like this. So you have this like ghost hollow effect that is appearing, and basically you are playing all the voices at the same time, and you're also detuning them, creating this kind of like hollow effect where the voices are like swinging all together. And as it's polyphonic, as I told you before, you have the possibility to add voice dispersion into the sound to make it sound more alive, and this works really, really well with the unison, like I showed you on the CS-80. So if I add a little bit of voice dispersion like this, I'll just put everything to the max. Well, you have something that is even like more alive and natural. You can even try with the MK1 filter. And you hear the grit is different, it's like more grainy, more gritty. So yeah, this is another good addition, and if you really want to do some patches that take a lot of space and that just surround you, like unison is the key, and it works really, really nicely with the character of the instrument. Another interesting feature we added is basically adding patch points here and there. So we added different patch points, but the one I want to talk about right now is the oscillator outputs. So basically what you can do now is taking the the sound of the oscillators and patching it anywhere you want in the synthesizer. So you can do audio rate modulation. And for example, if you're doing it on the filter cutoffs, for example, well, it sounds really, really, really good. So I'm going to disable this modulation right now just to hear the sound without this. And if I engage the audio rate modulation and the filter cutoff, you will hear the difference. And you hear it, right? It's like super, super, super nice, like beefy, and it really adds up a natural feeling that you don't really have on the software without like modulating like this. If I go stronger on the filter, so yeah, beefy and surprising. I really love this feature, and it's really, really nice to have it, because on the original hardware you can't do that. So a nice addition that I really enjoy. Some other small touches we added are like an alternative mode for envelope generator 2 to make it like more modern and more standard, because the original behavior is kind of weird for nowadays standards. And also, I decided to add different modes for the envelope generator 1. So I added a trigger mode on top of the normal mode and the loop mode. And I really wanted to have a trigger mode to design drums, because the original envelope is a attack, hold, release. So if you want to do like percussive sounds, you need to release the key really quickly. So if I use the normal mode like this, my kick will be weird like this. So it's not really convenient to design drums. So the trigger mode lets you go to the release stage instantly, and it's really, really better to do kicks. So an example, for example. So there. So it really lets you like build up some really, really nice drums, and this synthesizer is really, really good to do some percussive sounds. So another example, for example, with this like and it really doesn't sound like an analog synth, right? It sounds like a very proper sound design sound. It really helps designing percussive and super impressive sound. So now maybe another feature we could talk about, we didn't see it yet, it's the sequencer. And well, the sequencer is inspired by an original sequencer from the MS series called XQ10. So I made it different because I wanted to make it like adapted to the software usage. So it's a bit simplified, but it's made in a way that it's cool to use. So you have different modes, basically mode where it loops, mode where it loops and retriggers when you play a key, and a mode where it plays just one time. And another particularity is that it has 3 channels. So you can either have 3 channels like A, B, C, or we can merge the channel A and channel B to do like longer modulations. And what I did is I streamlined the channel C to pitch, but also you have the possibility to patch it the way you want and put it in volts instead. So let's hear a quick pattern that has been made with the sequencer. So a sort of techno sequence, and it's really like tied to the essence of the SQ10. Like you can really do this funny loops like that sound like techno-ish. I also have another preset that is like really nice called Amsterdamer. And it's a bit different here. I think Victor used unquantized pitch and played it the way he wanted. So if I'm correct, I'm not sure it's the right preset. It's really nice. What's really cool about this this sequencer is that you can use one channel to like do a melodic sequence, and then you can just like modulate the filters independently and do like something that goes beyond just a melodic sequence, and that really brings a groove into the game, you know. A last thing I want to do before going to the questions is maybe like the CS-80, doing a quick look at one preset that I thought was great and try to understand how it's been made. So the preset I chose is called Godzilla. Here it is. Oh no, maybe before, I wanted to show you one little trick before going to the next stage. You know, I told you we have some added features in the patch bay. And if you look at on the bottom right, you have something called external out. And here I have some drum loops playing. And what I can do is that I can route the signal of these tracks into the MS-20 tracks and take the signal and process it in the filters or the ESP and etc. And the MS-20 was used extensively in that approach, I mean the hardware. For example, Aphex Twin, a lot of people from the French house scene were using the MS-20 as a synth, but also as an effect processor, because you have a double filter with very interesting and characterful filters, and also the ESP that distorts a lot. So let's just route a few drums and see how it reacts, okay? So I will patch my external out into the external input of the filters, like this, and what will happen if I play a note is that I'm supposed to hear some drums. So here it is. So now, if I try to tweak my filters, so now I'm using the MK2 filter. And what I can do maybe is switch to the MK1 filter and see if the character is different. So yeah, it's much different. And maybe what I can do now is try to mess with the sound and transform it to make it my own. So maybe I'll patch the oscillator to output into the filters, for example, and modulate the cutoff with it. No more grain. nice. And maybe I can do something else. I mean, I told you there is an envelope follower, and maybe I can try to use the envelope follower to modulate the filter cutoff. So I will try this on the low pass, maybe. Okay, and maybe now I can try to use the ASP to distort even further the sound. So, okay, I didn't plug it beforehand, so we couldn't hear the envelope follower. Now we can hear it. So now it sounds like claps. So I'm going to patch now the output of the ASP into the mastering and see how it distorts the sound. Gotta watch the ears because it's really, really punchy. Maybe I can try to push even harder the input. So yeah, that's just an example of what you can do with it, but you can really transform the sound and distort it, filter it, modulate it, use noise with oscillator, use LFOs to really like make it your own and transform the drum loop. Like maybe if I switch the drum loop just for another example. This is the MK2, it's cleaner. MK1. So yeah, that was an example, and you can hear kind of an FX Twin vibe into these sounds, you know, the way it's modulating it. And yeah, so maybe we can just jump to the last part. So I picked one preset called Godzilla, and I thought it was really interesting because when having a first look at it, I was like, wow. There are a lot of different things happening, and it's like probably the FX doing everything. Then I watched the FX, and it was just like a multi-band to, you know, make it more bright, but the rest was all on the done like on the voice itself. So let's hear how it sounds. And if we mute the FX, it's just like less brightness. So yeah, so let's try to understand what happens here. And basically there are not much, and the biggest part of the job is done by the filters. So if I open the filters like this, so you hear some really wide presence, and it's because of the unison. So if I remove it, okay, it's less impressive. So I will put it back. And now let's try to understand what happened with the filters. Now that opened up everything, there is not much happening. So I will start by the low pass filter. So there is a lot happening here, and it's not just the resonance, right? So I'll just turn down the resonance. So these little monsters, birds, are created by one of the modulations here. So I will turn down the modulation generator, and I think that's what gives movement to the sound. And I will turn down the other modulation. So listening to the raw sound like this, we have a rough idea on what happens. And basically, on these bottom modulation amounts, you can see that the oscillators are patched into each filter, the low pass and the high pass. So this is what brought the movement, and so it's actually frequency modulation on the cutoffs. So I'll just put it back gradually. And I'll push a little bit more the modulation generator to create more movement. I'll do the same for the high pass. And now that we are here, maybe we can just add a few spices to the mix. So maybe we can just do what we did before, patch the signal out into the external signal processor, and patch the output into the mastering. So watch the volume. I'll reduce the volume a little bit. Let's hear the difference without and with it. Oh yeah. That's dirty. So it's really, really nice. I mean, if you play video games, you really hear some kind of Doom vibe here. So it's, I think the name Godzilla is really, really a nice pick. And what's really crazy is that this is just on its own in the box, you know? There's not much added by the FX right now. So yeah, that's what I wanted to show you guys, and I hope it was instructive. So I think I'm done, and maybe we can jump here to the questions, if that's fine for you. Yeah. All right, so let me see the chat. So the first question is, what hardware supports the MP MIDI polyphonic expression function of the CS-80? So what I understand from this question is that what can you use with CS-80 V basically to do like polyphonic aftertouch and so on. So basically any device that is like labeled MP is compatible with the CS-80 and it will be able to access like the expected functions. And on the other hand, if you have a polyphonic aftertouch keyboard, so here I have a Microfreak and it supports it, or I know that the Ableton Push has polyphonic aftertouch too, and you have a few other synths on the market that can do that, where you can modulate the synth using polyphonic aftertouch. Next question, will you in a future update for the MS-20 V allow the import of KORG legacy MS-20 presets, or can that be done now? So I can answer that right now, it's absolutely not possible. it's kind of the same logic with our updates. When we fully rebuild an instrument, we are basically redoing the audio engine, the architecture of the sound, the features, everything is different. Here, the version from KORG has been done by KORG, and we did our own version. There are like almost 20 years that separates the two versions from each other. And basically the parameters and the ranges and the audio engine in the original KORG software is completely different from what we have here. So basically, if we would manage to import something that would probably doesn't work, well, it wouldn't result in the same sound at all. So it's kind of impossible, actually. It's kind of playing a DVD in a VHS player. You can't really do that. How did you duplicate the CS-80 V channel 1 on channel 2? This I can show you. So it's really easy. You can do that from the center strip. You know these preset buttons here in the center? Well, it defines the sound for each channel, basically. And what you can do on the right side is you can click on init, which resets the sound of the channels. And you can also duplicate from one channel to another here. So if I click on this button, I will copy the sound of the other channel. It's really convenient if you want to do like very similar sounds and just modify a few parameters to make it and pan them to make it binaural and thing. You know. Next question. Will you ever release a keyboard that supports polyphonic aftertouch? That's a good question. I mean, it's a technology like historically that has been dropped in the 80s or 90s or something. And it's true that nowadays there are not much products that offer this possibility. So I guess we want to do it and we should do it one day. So I look forward if one day we release a keyboard supporting that. Can the signal in be used by the external sidechain input in the MS-20? So earlier, what I did is I took the external output and I put it in the external inputs of the synthesizer. This is to like route the signal into the filters and all the audio chain. Also, what I did is I routed this signal to the ESP, the external signal processor, to add overdrive. You can also directly route in the signal in if you want, but you won't process the sound. So what I recommend is that you just plug the sound wherever you want in the audio chain, modify the sound the way you want, and then put back the sound, the signal back into the input. How different is the Arturia version from KORG version? Well, it's definitely different. I mean, the version from KORG is kind of old and ours is really recent, so we take full benefit of the CPU that we can find in the market now. So more CPU processing means more accuracy in some ways. I didn't really try to compare these two versions, to be honest. But let's say the Arturia version is our interpretation of what a MS-20 should sound like as a software reproduction. And basically the best thing to do is try the two versions. And if you don't own our version, you can just install the demo and make up your mind from your own like taste and experience. Then next question. Can you sync the sequencer with the tempo of the DAW? Yes, of course. You have several sync modes. You have Hertz, you have BPM, and you have sync. You can sync like normally. You can sync in triplets. You can sync in dotted divisions. So you can definitely follow the DAW tempo. Then I was playing yesterday with CS-80 and I heard clicking when releasing the notes. Okay, so I don't really know what was the patch you played. So either it was a patch, or if you really think that this behavior is not normal, maybe you should get in contact with our support. Maybe you are facing a bug or there is a bug somewhere. So it's not really, I can't really dig what you saw, but you should definitely consider contacting us if you think there is a problem. We'll be happy to help. Next question. For the next recollection update, is it possible to update the vocoder to allow for user-defined carrier inputs? Okay, so what you want to do is use another synthesizer to be the carrier into the vocoder V. That's a good question. I mean, I didn't think about it, to be honest, beforehand. And well, maybe it could offer some like more versatile and exciting possibilities. So I'm not really sure if we can have different sidechain inputs, because we are already having sidechain input to route the audio signal to the vocoder, so to use your voice, for example. But from a synth, I'm not sure. Yeah, we should dig into it. Would you consider the Yamaha DX1? So I guess it's a suggestion to reproduce it in V collection. I'm not sure actually. You know, what I want to do in the next V collection is kind of secret, so I won't tell you. But I will take note of this idea, and very soon we'll start a survey. So we'll send emails to our customers and user base asking what is the synth that you really would like to see in V collection, in the next version of V collection. So I would definitely suggest to vote for the synth you prefer into this survey, and maybe your voice will be heard. Who knows? Next question. Are there any new MIDI controllers on the way with MP and Poly Aftertouch? I think this question has already been asked previously. So I replied that I would be really happy to see that coming. So I hope we'll work on this in the future. And I think that's it for the questions. So I hope the live stream was good for you and that you had a good time, and that above all discovered some stuff that you didn't know about the instruments, some tips and tricks, and that it made you curious to dig into the new instruments. So of course, remember, V collection features a lot of other instruments on top of CS-80 V and KORG MS-20 V. You have the 2 new Prophets, you have the augmented series, you have the new piano. So, and of course, 14 amazing sound banks. So I'd recommend to dig into whatever is of interest for you, and discover the instruments we've cooked for you for this V collection 9. And I'm really, really proud to be able to introduce you to these new instruments today. And I hope we'll see you next time. See ya.